this is a continuation of doing some problems where you'll be factoring a difference of two squares, but it might be in a little bit more interesting format. So for instance, remember the basic formula is a squared minus b squared is a plus b times a minus b. But let's say you had 2x plus 1 squared minus 25. This is actually in the format of the difference of two squares. So if I write it that way, this is already written as a perfect square, and then 25 is a perfect square as well. So if I am careful here, it says you take the first plus the second times the first minus the second. So what's in each parenthesis? So I have 2x plus 1 plus 5, and then I've got 2x plus 1 minus 5. Now, you need to simplify within each parenthesis. So this gives me 2x plus 6 times 2x minus 4. All right, so we've simplified within parentheses. Now, before you're done factoring, you always have to look at each new factor and make sure it can't be factored any further. So if we look in that first parentheses, can 2x plus 6 be factored any further? And can 2x minus 4 be factored any further? And actually both of them can, because there's a common factor of 2. So out of the first parentheses, I could take out a 2x plus 3 times, out of the second parentheses, I also happen to be able to take out a 2, just coincidentally. All right, so when all is said and done, we're almost there, believe it or not. I need to multiply this 2 times that 2, which is 4. And I have x plus 3 times x minus 2. So just notice, when it's all done, it doesn't look like I did a difference of two squares, but the original problem was written in that format. That is not the only way to find the final factorization here. So I'm going to do exactly the same problem, but not doing it as a difference of two squares, but instead taking the quantity 2x plus 1 squared, multiplying it out, subtracting 25, and then factoring from there. So this is a completely different approach. If you don't notice, it's a difference of two squares, and you are asked to factor this. Well, we can multiply the 2x plus 1 times 2x plus 1 using any method you want. I'm going to do the FOIL method. So that's 4x squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 1 minus 25. All right, and then we're going to combine like terms. So we have 4x squared plus 4x minus 24. And now the directions are, at this point, what can I do? I've simplified as much as possible. All right, step 1 is to take out the common factor. And there is a common factor of 4. So I have 4 times x squared plus x minus 6. And now I need to factor x squared plus x minus 6. Now you can do this by trial factors, which is probably the easiest way, because since this is simply an x squared, you can get the x times the x. And now I need to have factors over here that multiply out to be negative 6. One's going to be plus and one's going to be minus. And I want two numbers that multiply out to be 6 but add up to be 1, right? I want the product to be 6 and I want the sum to be 1. So it's really either going to be a 6 and a 1. I'm sorry, I want the product to be negative 6. So 6 and 1, or 3 and 2, bigger, let's see, so the bigger number is going to have to be positive, and the smaller number is going to have to then be negative to get a negative 6. So I'm going to have a plus 3 and a minus 2, and you could check to make sure that's correct by doing the FOIL method. X squared minus 2x plus 3x minus 6 does add up to x squared plus x minus 6. So I got 4 times x plus 3 times x minus 2. Now, is that what we got before? 4 times x plus 3 times x minus 2. There it is. Exactly the same thing. Completely different approach. So when you have something like this, 2x plus 1 quantity squared minus 25, I would probably just go ahead and do this as a difference of two squares and then go from there. Here's another problem. It's similar, but it's slightly tricky, a little bit trickier. This is, again, 4 squared minus an x minus 5 squared. But when you do the difference of two squares here, you have to be careful. I'm going to use a bracket so you'll see what's going to go on here. I have to do 4 plus the x minus 5. But for the other one, I have to do 4 minus the x minus 5. I need to put a parenthesis to show I'm subtracting that whole quantity, x minus 5. I know that some of you can do this in your head. That's fine, but be careful with your signs. And at this point, I'm going to combine the like terms and just write the x term first. So, and use a parenthesis. So I'm going to have x minus 1. That's what, in the first bracket, that simplifies to x minus 1. But over here, I need to distribute my negative sign. So that's 4 minus x plus 5. Some of you may have written 4 minus x plus 5 at the first step by realizing you're subtracting that quantity, and that's all right. So x minus 1 can't be factored any further, and I can't simplify it either. But 4 minus x plus 5, well, that's a 9 minus x, or a negative x plus 9. This is one way of writing the answer. But there are lots of different ways people might write the answer. For instance, you could factor out a negative 1 out of that 9 minus x, because remember, 9 minus x is the opposite of x minus 9, or negative 1 times x minus 9. I covered that in another video. So if you wanted to see the x first, you could pull out the minus 1, and then you'd have the x minus 1 stays the same, and you'd have x minus 9. So that's another way of writing the answer. There's a lot of different ways of writing this. But as long as when you multiply it all back, it would be the same thing as if you multiplied this first one all the way back, then it's correct. So let's do this the second way. Let's go ahead and multiply this out and see if we would get the same thing. Okay, so starting over, if you didn't want to do it as a difference of two squares, I could go ahead and simplify this part and then subtract from 16. So I'm going to be very careful here. I'm going to multiply that out. So watch. I have to multiply out x minus 5 times x minus 5, which, using the FOIL method, is x squared minus 5x minus 5x plus 25, which can still be simplified to x squared minus 10x plus 25. So in parentheses here is the x minus 5 squared. Notice I need to put it in parentheses, not just put the minus sign in front of the x squared. So now I can distribute the minus sign, negative x squared plus 10x minus 25. And I can add the like terms. So I'm going to have a negative x squared, a plus 10x, and a negative 9. Now, at this point, I think it's easier to factor out a negative 1. So I'm going to factor out a negative 1. I like my x squared positive if possible, so that's x squared minus 10x plus 9. I could write that as a negative 1 or just a minus sign. And now we're going to factor the x squared minus 10x plus 9. Hopefully you realize that 9 and 1 are the right combination and they're both negatives. So to get the correct middle term of negative 10x and the correct constant of positive 9. So again, that's one way of writing the answer. Let's just go back here. X minus 9 times x minus 1 with a negative sign. There it was again. See here? Remember I had a negative sign and x minus 1 times an x minus 9. So you've got more than one way of doing these types of problems, but be careful with distributing your negative sign.